Today I'll be making an IKEA jar terrarium with mosses and plants. Now it is time for the substrate. The substrate consists of sphagnum moss, orchid bark, activated charcoal, cocoa fiber, and worm casting. Now we get a piece of the cocoa fiber and wet it in a tub of water. Once the cocoa fiber has absorbed all of the water, we measure 1 part cocoa fiber, we then dump it into the mixing bowl. Next is the sphagnum moss. I am removing the sticks and twigs from the sphagnum moss because it risks getting moldy. We will now measure 2 parts of sphagnum moss. Next up is 1/4 part of orchid bark. Now it's time for the worm casting. Now we add a 1/4 part worm casting into the mixing bowl. Now it's time for the activated charcoal. Now that everything has been put into the bowl, I will mix it thoroughly. As you can see here, this substrate holds moisture, provides nutrients for plants, is well draining, and is resistant to compression. Here is some of the other things we will be needing for the terrarium. This is a small jar I got from IKEA with a sealable lid to hold the humidity and not let too much humidity escape. This is the substrate barrier I'll be using. It's weed barrier and will stop the substrate from falling down into the drainage layer. The substrate barrier must be the same size as outside of the terrarium so it ensures a good fit, not letting any substrate down into the drainage layer. Here I am trimming off the edges of the substrate barrier to make sure that it isn't too big and can fit inside of the terrarium. As you can see here, the substrate barrier fits perfectly into the terrarium. For the drainage layer, I will be using Leca. I will have about an inch of drainage layer. This layer helps drain the moisture from the substrate and helps cycle the water throughout the terrarium. Now it is time to add the substrate barrier on top of the drainage layer. Now it is time to add the substrate. The substrate should be at least 1 to 2 inches. And the substrate should be sloping up from the front to back. This will provide a sense of depth in the terrarium. Now it is time for the moss. The moss I will be using is Pincushion moss. I'm cutting off the bottom of it so it fits nicely onto the substrate. This does not hurt the plant, so it'll be fine and help provide a better look in the terrarium. Now it's time for the plants. The first plant I'll be using is a pink Photonia. The second is a small Peperomia. And the third is a larger red Peperomia species. It's now time to plant the moss onto the substrate. I'm going to cover just about every part of the substrate with this Pincushion moss. Next up is driftwood. You can get driftwood pretty much anywhere, lakes, beaches, This one I'm putting into the center of the terrarium in between the mosses. It's time to add the plants. I'm going to get a cutting of this Sphagnum. Now I'm going to add the cutting of Peperomia into the terrarium. Next is going to be a small cutting of the small Peperomia. Now it's time for the larger red Peperomia. This Peperomia is so cool because the leaves are a deep red color. As you can see here, the terrarium is almost complete. We have just one more final step. Springtails. These little critters will help clean the terrarium by eating mold and decaying matter. Finally, we have a complete terrarium. Let me know if you have any comments on this terrarium. And of course, thank you for watching.